I'm going to test out a new toy today. This is a Super Nintendo SPC700 module turned into an MSX cartridge. Yeah, actually, these have been around for a few months now. I actually got this about a few months ago, but when I first bought mine, these were only being sold as the PCB. You had to get all the parts yourself and do it as a kit, which I assume that's how they were going to be sold, just because the only way to get one of these SPC700 modules is to take apart an old Super Famicom or Super NES. But now you can actually buy these fully complete on Yahoo Auctions, but just the PCB by itself was very cheap. It's taken me this long, though, just because I didn't really have the time to really put it together. You know, people that do soldering regularly, they're just ready to go. But me, I don't really have the space. I don't have a work room to do it in. And I'm just lazy, to be honest. So it's actually taken me like about 3 months to finally put this together. Which, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty simple board, really, if you think about it, because the SPC700 is a fully, it's a module by itself. So you just need a few basic little parts so that the MSX can interface with it. Which, by the way, feel free to enjoy my god-awful assembly job. Yeah, I'm not really into soldering. I do it if it's a project I think I can do. Generally, more complicated projects, I just pay a friend to do, because I just don't have the patience for it. And this is a prime example of this. First off, I ordered the wrong resistor here. You only need a little tiny 3-banded one, but I bought a 5-banded one, so I had to put it in vertically because it's just way bigger than it needs. Not that that's really an issue. Also, hilariously enough, just look at the way I connected this. Yeah, can you see this right here? If you've never looked at an SPC700 module before, the connector they used to connect to the normal Super Famicom motherboard is a little weird. It actually uses rectangular pins, and they're kind of offset, so, the first row is indented from the second row. So what you're actually supposed to do when you build this cartridge, you're supposed to remove the connector from the module entirely, solder in, and that way it's nice and thin. Only about 2 millimeters of depth, where you can see mine is fat ass. Basically, the reason mine is like this is because I do own a Hakko 808. I don't use it very often, but so I pulled that out like, alright, let's desolder this little thing. And, well, I haven't used it in about 3 years, and for some reason it just wouldn't heat up. Just no heat at all. The pump works, but no heat, so took it apart, gave it a cleaning, but nah, I think the heating element died. And I just didn't feel like waiting to buy a new one. So I just said, you know what? Fuck it. And I just brute forced the connector in there. So yeah, as you can see, the pins on the back of the module itself are straight. Though, as I said, the connector is actually offset. So, but these pin headers that are attached to the PCB are about 2 millimeters long. So, took some brute force, but it's on there, quite solid, and yeah, it works fine. So maybe in the future I'll redo it, but for now I'm just quite happy if it works. So that's also why, if you look at my screw here, I had actually bought the recommended screws for this kit, because again, it's only supposed to be about 2 millimeters of distance between these two boards, but I didn't feel like buying longer ones, so I literally just took 2 bolts and a bunch of washers and have 1 nut on the end of each of the 2 screws holding it together. So I honestly find this hilarious, but I don't know, when you make it yourself, it's got kind of I'm quite proud of this. But anyway, yeah, let's get the cartridge in. Alright, so you can see I've got the cartridge plugged into my Turbo R. Since the cartridge is fatter than it's really meant to be, I've got it plugged into a slot expander. So it gives me plenty of room. So you can decide its unusual size, no problems. There's actually three different things you can do with this cartridge currently. Obviously, the big one is playing music, which there's two ways to do that. And the coolest way is to run it right in the MSX, which is why I've got the Mega Flash ROM in there. So let's just switch over to the monitor here. And go to MSX. And let's just go over. And let's just start out with everybody's favorite. And there we go, despite my horrible soldering. Working perfectly. Turn the volume down for a minute. So yeah, it runs in standard MSX DOS 2. Nice little player, gives you the information you'd want. And this player just loops forever. It'll just loop and loop and loop and loop until you hit escape. Also, compatibility of this cartridge is actually quite good. When I want to test SPC700 style music players, a great game to test with is Rendering Ranger R2. I am far from an expert on, the sound systems of Super Famicom, but from my understanding, this is one that kind of really pushes the module's 64K memory to its limit. Some module players will not play this soundtrack, including the red standalone player I have, which I'll talk about in a minute. So, but thankfully, this one will. So let's just run. Turn the volume back up. So yeah, as you can hear, it can play Rendering Ranger just fine, which makes me very happy. Because that one seems to be a difficult one for, I even once tried to do an SPC rip of that game by myself, and even the emulated ones on the computer wouldn't play it. The one here is the typical one you get from Zofar, and that does work on this one. And it works under emulation, but it doesn't work on my other player. But anyway, so this is probably the coolest way to use this cartridge, is to, just load it up on your MSX and let the MSX do the playing correctly. But, as I said, there's a few different ways to use this cartridge, so hold up. Okay, the second way you can play music on this cartridge is by using a MSX Pi. Which is basically a Raspberry Pi Pico running custom firmware, which allows you to connect directly to a PC over USB. This particular cartridge is also made by the same guy who makes the who designed the specifically SPC7 cartridge. So, just turn this on. This is actually the original player for this cartridge. This came before the MSX DOS version. Come on. So you'll see all you get is the basic screen that says SPC700 detected, so we know it's there. And over to my host PC. And since this is using a serial connection, it's a little slower. And you just download the COM and the file and send it over. One reason it takes longer to load is, since this is running a dedicated ROM, it's actually running my Turbo in Z80 mode, whereas when I run off MSX DOS, I'm running in proper R800 mode, which is much faster. But, still works beautifully. And running files this way is actually kind of convenient because, you know, like, if you got a list of your favorite music, you probably want to put it on, you know, the MSX DOS version, so you can just run it off the SD card. But if you just download some new SPC files and you just want to test, since you're running off PC, you can just send it whatever you want. Like when you run on the MSX DOS, you're limited to, you know, a file name of 8 characters, so you have to rename everything. This way you don't have to do that, because you're just essentially turning the cartridge into one big giant serial-based sound card. So, this is also pretty convenient if you have access to an MSX Pi. Alright, and the final thing you can currently do with one of these cartridges, and this does require an MSX Pi to use the connection, is that you can use this with MAMIDI Mimo. MAMIDI Mimo is a program I keep meaning to do a proper video on, because I still see it to be very underused by the Western audience. And normally what I do with it is I use its VGM player, which is a really nice player, but that's actually kind of a side purpose. The real purpose is making music. Unlike a tracker, this is more old school style, where you're more actually, you know, plugging in your MIDI keyboard and actually playing notes. And if you don't even have the hardware, it does fully support emulated chips, so you can, you know, just mess around with it. But basically what you can do here is we can add instruments. So for example, if I take like, you know, an FM chip, like, I don't know, the YM2151, and over here, you know, you get all your settings. And you can either use emulated, or if you have supported hardware, you can connect to the real chip and play, literally live play in real time. But in this case, we're messing with SPC700, so that's PCM. And now what I can do, I don't know how we're going to be able to see this, but because I would like to see more people try and actually use this software, because it's amazing. Is that right? So instead, I'm going to switch over from software to, yeah, I know. Oh yeah. First, it wants me to set the COM port. This is on COM number 8. And there you go. See? Real SPC700 for MSX. Now, that's connected. Let me zoom out a minute. Now, normally what you do is you plug in your MIDI keyboard or controller of choice, but here, just with the mouse, yeah, that's coming from the actual SPC700 chip. I'm actually playing in real time. Since the SPC700 is 100% a sample loaded system, what you'd want to do here is, for example, let's import some instruments or timbres. And you can actually do this directly from an SPC file. So, I don't know, how about good old Final Fantasy Mystic Quest Battle 1? Then, once we've loaded those up, we can just kind of go through, and basically you get a whole list of all of the samples that are included. So, I don't know, let's pick this one. Okay. And there's our Mystic Quest electric guitar. So, well. So there we go. We can play Final Fantasy guitar directly. Actually, using this setup, if you're feeling musically inclined, you can literally just send the chip whatever you want and then sit down and jam on your keyboard, as opposed to, you know, using something like a tracker. Cool stuff. Yeah, which definitely, if you've never messed with Mod Mini Mimo and you like making music on old stuff, definitely give it a try, because it is an amazing accomplishment. Anyway, to close up, yeah, I really like this cartridge. It's very compatible. Like, if you remember, a while ago, over a year ago now, I've been using this standalone SPC700 player. And I do quite like this player, but I got it actually has excellent sound quality, but I've got two little issues with it. One, it doesn't have a proper looping mode. You can tell it to, you know, repeat, so it'll play a track over and over again, but what happens is it gets to the end of the track, and it actually stops playing, has to reload the SPC file into its own memory, and then starts over again. So if you're like me, and you want to just, you know, make some recordings of your favorite tracks, but you want to make them like 10 loops long, like your favorite RPG battle music, for example, you can't really do this with this, because it just plays once and resets. Whereas with the MSX cartridge, you can just let it loop forever. Also, well, this is generally quite good, it will not play Rendering Ranger R2, whereas the MSX cartridge will. I'm not really sure on the technical reasons for that, but so overall, the MSX cartridge, besides costing very little, especially if you get the kit version, I believe if you want to buy the completed version, I think he's selling them for about 15,000 yen, which for those of you living abroad, that's actually really cheap. But, though they are a little bit difficult to acquire. So, well, I do still quite like this player, especially if you have no other hardware and you want something standalone. I'm really happy I made the effort to finally get my MSX card put together, because lovely piece of kit. It outputs unamplified line audio, so it is ideally, you know, the better sound system you have to hook it up to, preamp, amp, mixer, whatever, the better sound you're going to get. Lovely device. Hope you enjoyed it.